Welcome to another episode of the Financial Armor Show. My name is Brad Cooper, the host of your show and president of Cooper Financial Investments. And I want to welcome, as always, my amazing, brilliant co-host, Tony Shore. How are you doing today, Tony?
I'm doing great, Brad. Doing great. I mean, not as good as
Wonderful.
you, of course. You're fantastic. No, I'm great too. It's just been quite a week. It looks like spring might actually be here. So just preparing for that. And, my wife and I spent last weekend just thoroughly cleaning the house. Now we got to hit the garage where all the junk is stored and get into the rafters. I want to clean that all out. But yeah, I'm having a good time. How about you? What have you been up to?
Wow, same thing. When you talk about spring break, I've been reminded the past week, my wife and I got out of town for a few days, went over to San Diego, and just
Nice.
fighting the crowds of people between spring breakers. And then we
Yeah.
were over there during St. Pat's Day,
Oh
which,
yeah.
well, thousands and thousands of, I call them kids with green on, and having a good
Yeah.
time. Brought back
Yeah.
good memories from 30, 40 years ago.
Sure. Well, I'm half Irish, so we
Yes.
actually watched a couple of we listened to some Irish music and watched a couple of Irish based movies and video clips online. My daughter came over. I think she's going to do J term next year in 2025 in Ireland possibly, and I'm excited because
Wow.
she'll have like 4 days to herself, and I'm thinking that maybe I should go over there. You know what I mean?
Wow. I'm of all the places we traveled, I know we had a training event, but we extended into a vacation as well a few years ago. Ireland, Scotland, just beautiful. And
It's
the
on my bucket list. I'm half
oh,
Irish and I've never been. I've been to
yeah,
England and London,
yes.
but because I had a business trip paid, so I spent an extra week in London, but never made it to Ireland. That's a goal. My mom's maiden name is Whelan, and that's a
Yes.
popular name in Ireland. And we've traced our family heritage right back there. So
Well,
uh,
we may be
I gotta go.
cousins, Tony, because
Yeah.
I'm Ireland and Scotland. My grandmother's maiden name was Scott.
Oh,
So
really? Wow. There you
so
go.
yeah, but
It's a small
definitely
world.
recommend it. It
This
is.
It's a small and for better or worse, if you go back far enough, I'm sure we're
Yes,
all related.
absolutely.
That's what they say.
I bet you're right there, but
Yeah.
definitely a plug for Ireland and
Yes,
the
for sure
Irish.
on the show today. But you've got a good topic for us. What are we talking about today, Brad?
Well, something that happens a lot over in Ireland and Scotland and England is rain.
Yeah, it's
And the
true. Rains
topic
a lot.
today
Yeah,
is get ready for rainy days. And we're talking more on the financial side
sure.
because life happens to all of us. I don't care what position of life you're in, retirement, how much money you have or don't have. Be prepared and get ready for those rainy days. And
Yeah.
and we have some great topics we're going to talk about from several different resources that we pulled, Tony, that to help you better prepare for those rainy days.
Yeah, you can't avoid rainy days, but you can obviously take steps to keep yourself dry. And I like the financial analogy that comes with that, right?
So grab your umbrella because, rainy day protection is so important for anyone in life, but especially as we age and the potential of illness and healthcare issues that will come up at some
Yeah.
point in your life if they haven't already.
Yeah. Yeah, healthcare is a big one, and that's a rainy day that happens for a lot of folks in retirement more and more. That's when you start needing more and more healthcare. You have more and more healthcare needs and long-term care, right?
Absolutely, Tony. And we've talked a lot about that from your parents, my
Sure.
parents, long-term care needs, and just the rising costs, which I think we're all seeing, and a lot of our clients, as we're bringing up this topic, has been experiencing with loved ones. And I just read an article the other day that said the average long-term care facility in the United States is over $9,000 per month. And that's average. Some, just like up in Minnesota, which we talked about, didn't you mention on when the show's 12,000 or maybe 15,000?
12,000 for a
12.
memory. It was 12, and this is about a year ago, so I don't know, it's probably even more now, but the memory care unit at a really nice private facility here where I live, where my mother-in-law is at, the memory care unit starts at about $12,000 a month.
And that's for one person, correct?
One person, 1 month, $12,000. I mean,
Times
it's
12 months, that's 144,000. Times that by 10 years, that's over $1.5 million.
right. And so it's not realistic. It's a real crisis
No.
in our country right now. But there are things you can do to ensure for long-term care. I know you talk to your clients about different options, don't you?
Absolutely. And one of the things we're seeing, Tony, on a daily basis in our office is new people are coming in and even clients who have purchased long-term care policies maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And when they purchased these long-term care policies, of course, they were inexpensive because most people were still working. The need for long-term care then wasn't as great today. I know going
Right.
back 30, 40 years ago, back in the good old days, my mom likes to refer those to as family would take care of family. We weren't all spread out through the United States,
And
but
people weren't living as long.
and not living as long.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing happening, I'm getting a phone call, it seems like at least once a day, is Brad, we've had this long term care policy for years. We have put in tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. And now we're getting a notice they're increasing our rates. And if we don't pay, we're going to be subject to maybe a reduced benefit or eventually may lose our entire plan if we don't pay what is required.
Yeah. And I know there are different strategies. We've talked about this on other shows. We're
Right.
not going to dwell on long term care, but I think insuring for long term care or getting policies that can help cover, or like cash value policies or annuity policies that can kick in if you need long term care, that's like keeping an umbrella in the trunk of the car. You probably won't need it, but if unexpected rain pops up, you'll be grateful it's there.
Absolutely. And you hit it right on, Tony. One of the most common that's not known among most people I talk to on a daily basis is life insurance. And I know a lot of times when that term is thrown out, everyone just freezes up. I don't need life insurance. My kids are doing better than I am. But no, these policies and some annuities as well have long-term care benefits that basically will
Yeah.
pay out
Yeah.
if there's a need for long-term care or even in most cases in-home healthcare needs. And here's the
Yeah.
best part of it, Tony, is what happens if you go through retirement and you put money in these types of strategies that we just talked about and you
Hmm.
don't need it for long-term care. Let's say you pass away. The family would get to keep all the money plus the earnings that's inside the policy that would be passed on to your estate. So you're
There you
not
go.
losing at all.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So, long-term care and healthcare needs are one thing you need to be ready for. That's a rainy day that can happen. What's something else that we need to prepare for in retirement, or that people need to be aware of?
Emergencies come up, and they come up at the worst times, of course.
They always do. Yeah.
And wow, I don't know about you, Tony, but in my life, it seems like financial emergencies are becoming more and more expensive than they used to 10, 15, 20 years ago. And that
Yeah.
could be a variety of things, from whether it's healthcare issues or out of pocket for healthcare costs. It could be, a major repair in your home. And the list goes on,
Yeah,
maybe your
cars,
cars.
appliance. Yeah, cars are probably the most expensive, and then there's appliances. I mean, I don't know about you if you've looked at this recently, but if you want to buy a halfway decent refrigerator today,
Yes.
replace it. My wife
Have
and
to.
I, ours
Yes.
is ours is like literally 25 years old and it's running fine, but it's like we're worried, and we're like, hey, maybe we could upgrade. We started looking at prices, and I was shocked at how much a
It's
decent refrigerator costs.
It's insane, and that's a
Yeah.
refrigerator. About 3 years ago, of course, in the middle of Arizona summer, when it was about 150 degrees out,
Let me
it felt
guess,
like
your
that.
AC went out.
Boy, you're so brilliant. But it gets
How did I
worse,
know?
Tony. It gets
It
worse.
gets worse.
Not only one unit goes out, the other unit goes out as well. And
Oh,
so pretty big units. So we call, we shop around, and finally they come out, thank God, in a very timely manner and replace the units. But when I got that bill, Tony, I about fell out of my chair because it was over 20,000 for 2 units.
oh my
And
gosh.
I remember back, I'm from Missouri originally, and we had to replace a unit. It was like 2 or 3 thousand back
Yeah,
then.
yeah. Last
So,
time I replaced it, it was probably $4,000, you know?
wow, it's it's crazy. And I just had this conversation just a few days ago in a meeting with some clients. They've been retired for many years, and we're talking about financial emergencies and just the topic we're talking about today.
Yeah.
And I said, here is what I experience with most of our clients and new people I'm talking to as we're making the transition and they're becoming clients is usually people have done a good job. They have a good income, Social Security, a lot have pensions, and a lot of their money is tied up in IRAs, which, by the way, is all taxable money, right? So when an emergency comes up, the first thing they do is call and say, Brad, we need $50,000. We need $25,000. And most of the time, that money comes out of their IRAs, which causes what?
Yeah,
Taxable issue.
taxation. Yeah,
So
taxes.
taxes, taxes, taxes. So my conversation with my clients was, now your beautiful home, which like most of us here in Arizona has appreciated so much the last several years. And I said, what's the value of your house now? And they said, Brad, it's worth $750,000. I said, wow, that's amazing. And I said, remind me, how much do you owe on it? And I knew the answer. They said, Brad, we don't owe any money on it. I
Mhm.
said, so basically, what you're telling me is you have $750,000 of cash doing nothing for you other than maybe growing. So here's the advice I had for them was consider, and we have a lot of strategic partners, whether it's with banks, credit unions, reverse mortgage specialists. I said you should consider getting a line of credit on your house. Yes, there's a small cost to get this set up. However, if you don't use it, you don't have to spend money on interest with it. But then when an emergency comes up, utilize that money instead of accessing tens of thousands of your IRA money that you're going to be paying maybe 20 to 30% of taxes on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tax you have to look at tax strategies as well. So when you talk about these emergencies that come up, you just talked about one possible solution, but I think you've talked a lot in past shows about creating an emergency fund, and people should have money saved up. Not only should you be putting money into your retirement accounts, but also into an emergency fund, right? Is that something you have always recommended, isn't it?
Absolutely. And one of the, top probably three things that we discussed other than risk and managing risk is making sure you have plenty of liquidity and having whether it's a healthy checking or savings account. In the past, when interest rates were like 100th of 1%, we advised, putting your money elsewhere. Now, as interest rates went up, now they're starting to come back down. There's some attractive, short term, maybe 3, 4, 5% accounts. In addition to that, we're recommending some very conservative brokerage accounts that are managed by our amazing money managers that offer a little bit of downside protection. And
Nice.
also, they're liquid, meaning
Hmm.
that you don't have to pay penalties to access your money. Normally, within 48 to 72 hours, you'll have the money deposited in your checking account. So we take liquidity very serious. A meeting I just had a couple days ago, Tony, they just retired here recently. And as we're going through the planning process, I said, is there any purchases that you're thinking you may want to make? And they said, Brad, thank you for asking. We're wanting to buy an RV. And do you know how much RVs are now, Tony?
I know they're pricey.
Wow. They found several, and I said, well, just out of curiosity, what price range?
Sure.
starting at $150,000.
Yeah, that's what
So,
I thought. I know they
and they
were over
go up
six
from
figures, though.
there, as
Yeah.
well, depending on what, bells and whistles you have. But I said, "That is great. Thank you, for sharing that with us, because that will have a big part of when you do need that money, we'll take a look at it." Because here's the question they ask: "Well, Brad, we're probably looking at maybe making a major purchase like this in the next 3 months. But here's some advice we're gonna need. Do we pay cash for it?" I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Could they do that? Yes, with no penalties and very little taxes on the earnings they made so far. But also, maybe interest rates are appealing where they could finance a portion of it. If that's the case, put a down payment down. And then if they need to make a monthly payment, we could pull that from their investments. So when we take a look at what they're going through, we take a look at all the different scenarios to see what makes the most sense. Sometimes being debt free makes sense, sometimes it does not. And a lot of that,
Sometimes it's smarter to use the bank's money. If your money is earning, say, just as this is an example, this isn't a guarantee or anything, but let's say somebody's earning 6% on their money and they can get a special loan for a vehicle or a home that's 3%. Okay. If that's the case, why wouldn't you use the bank's money at 3% and let yours keep growing at 6? Right? I mean, that's what
absolutely,
you do for your clients is you do the math, right? And you say, okay, if you use this money, you'll owe X amount in taxes, and you'll stop earning this amount of interest. If you use this money, you'll be paying this much interest. Is it less than that amount? Isn't that basically what you look at?
you're right on, Tony. And, you know, that's something that, it's not talked enough about. There's good debt, there's bad debt.
Yeah.
But if you can use the bank's money,
Yeah.
especially at a low interest rate, and most of
Yeah.
us remember, and our clients definitely remember the bad old days, I call them, when interest rates were 14, 15, 18%, very high. Of course, you want to pay that off quickly. But now, since interest rates are 2, 3, 4, 5%. And now, of course, for certain loans, it could be higher. Still, single digit rates aren't too bad. So that's something that we take a look at to make sure that makes sense. And one last thing I'll share with you is, because a lot of us, which is good, are brought up to get out of debt, stay out of debt, be debt free.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that message, but there is good debt, there's bad debt. And with the good debt, here's kind of the way we look at this. Let's say you have a mortgage loan and you're paying 3%. That's good debt, because there's a lot of accounts that have averaged historically, of course, there's no guarantee of future results, but have averaged 7, 8, 9% the last 10 to 15 years. So use your money, but on any given day, you have the ability, with our help, to hit a button and we can move the money over to your account and pay off all that debt in full. So really, you're debt free. You're
Yeah.
just utilizing and leveraging the bank's money to make more money on your money.
Yeah, because that's what banks and insurance companies do with your money. When you give them money and they give you some interest rate of like 3%, what do you think they're doing with that money? All that money is invested and they're
Oh,
earning interest. They're earning more interest on that money than they're paying you. And that's the goal here. So you just got to do the math and look at the numbers. And so many people don't understand how all this works and they
no.
don't know all the caveats. I mean, you have to look at taxes and everything. So obviously you talk about debt, you talk about an emergency fund, you talk about planning for healthcare, big expenses like long-term care. It's really good to be prepared for those rainy days in retirement, and you want to do it, make those preparations and get those strategies in place as soon as possible. How can our listeners get a plan in place or get a second opinion on where they're at, Brad?
Yes, call our office at 520-543-8345. Again, that's 520-543-8345. And we'll sit down with you at no cost. We'll discuss these important issues that we've been addressing on today's show and help you put together a plan and a strategy to help you, with your own personal situation. And here's where I see most everyone we sit down is different than their friends, their neighbors, their relatives. Or you could visit our website, financialarmorshow.com. Again, that's financialarmorshow.com, and send us a message. We'd be more than happy to sit down with you over a cup of coffee and discuss these important issues.
Yeah, I think that's great. So now, in the time we have left, let's look at some more rainy day scenarios that we should be prepared for. Brad, what's something else we need to be thinking about here?
Well, Investopedia, Tony, article I just read not too long ago said, here's the top 10 most common financial mistakes. And it ties into exactly what we're talking about. Avoid these mistakes at all costs to avoid, these rainy days and not having the protection. Number one is avoid overspending on things you don't need, which is common sense, right?
Yeah,
Um, but if you have that question, which we get calls all the time from our clients, Brad, we're thinking about making this purchase. Does it make sense? Is it going to hurt us? That puts the biggest smile on my face, Tony, is when we get those phone calls, because more so than ever, if they can afford it, our advice is yes, life is short.
sure.
Go out and spend that money. Closely, another area is closely monitor all spending habits. Wow, being over in San Diego and going out to eat and gas and everything, it's expensive. Much more than Arizona. Where I'm from Missouri, is much inexpensive, much cheaper than
Yeah.
Arizona. So monitor those spending habits because that can catch up on you.
Yeah. In fact, people don't take time to look at their credit card statements or their
Sure,
checking account statements and go through item by item. What is this? And then monthly, wow, how much did I spend? And put it in. There's so many great apps out there now to
true,
keep track of those things. My wife and I have realized, wow, we have a subscription to this online newspaper that we aren't reading anymore. It's $10 a month. Sounds like
yes.
nothing, but I'll tell you what, that adds up. We found, I mean, there were a number of those. So, I mean, even if you free up $200 a month, that's money you could be putting into your emergency fund each month or using to plan for retirement, right?
So true. And, that's one thing we encourage. Just like you said, look, not only your credit cards, but also your bank statements and bank
Yeah.
accounts. One thing I just caught me off guard, especially over the last several years in the pandemic when we're all home quite a bit. I mean, Netflix, Amazon, Disney,
Yep.
Apple,
Yep.
PureFlix. I
Yep.
mean, we had, I bet, no less than 7 or 8 subscriptions,
Yeah.
which then we start to evaluate, do we need all these?
Right. We had 9 going at one time, and
9.
I had to cut some off. I mean, with 3 growing children, and now they're all
Oh,
they're all
wow.
grown, but they're still using they're
Yes.
still I'm like, "I don't watch Hulu," and Allison goes, "I use our Hulu subscription." And I'm like, "Okay, where can we cut?" So we had to cut a few, but it's always good to stay on top of that. And I find we found a couple of charges, once in a while, like we didn't make, or they were false, or hey, we didn't know we were paying this, or they charged us that. So you got to stay on top of it. I don't care how much money you have. It's a smart thing to go through that, or how
Oh,
little. You need to look at those statements every month, at least once a month. I think when Sarah and I do, my wife and I,
right.
the burden I mean, just it's a freeing thing. When you sit down, it may grumble like, I don't want to budget. Everybody thinks that it's a dirty word. The B word is budget. It's a dirty word, but you do it and you feel so much better. You're both on the same page, you and your spouse, and then you know where you're at. You know what your costs are coming in. You know what's going out. It makes a world of difference for us.
So, same here, Tony. And another reason too, there's so much fraud out there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I just had an alert from one of my credit cards about 2 weeks ago, and they said, "Did you make these purchases? Is a gasoline purchase in Georgia?" And I said, "No, I'm in Arizona." And if it wasn't for my credit card and me paying attention to that on a regular basis, there would have been several hundreds of dollars that would have been charged
Yeah.
and missed.
Yeah.
So credit cards are good, but don't rely on them. My recommendation is there's a lot of good credit cards out there that pay points, cash back. They have perks. if you're using those, go in, monitor those. I would say a minimum monthly, but pay those off. And it's so easy today with the apps and online. Usually we'll charge ours up for points and perks, and then 4 or 5 days later, we'll pay it off. And we'll do that several times a month just to make sure you don't get sucked into that 28% interest cycle that these credit card companies are now charging.
Yeah. Yeah, you wanna make sure that you're prepared, and you're talking about avoiding costly mistakes is one way to be prepared for a rainy day, and though that can be a rainy day for a lot of people because they don't understand. And we've talked about a lot of them. You've brought up Social Security maximization. A lot of people just
Right.
file as soon as they can and don't think about it. That's a costly mistake in retirement, and that can cause some rainy days and derail your plans too, can it?
Absolutely. And it's just what's the saying, Tony? Either you're going to control your money or your money is going to control you.
Oh
And
yeah,
you want to control your finances
yeah,
and seek a financial service professional company like ours, and there's others out there too that really will take the time to spend with you talking about all these important topics we just talked about. My
yeah.
biggest frustration, Tony, being in this industry for over 30 years, is the majority of my industry is not doing that. You know,
Right.
they're they want your money, they want to invest it next. There's no
Yeah.
communication.
They
Service.
either just wanna sell you insurance or just want you to invest your
Right.
money, and, they don't look at the whole your whole picture and help you really plan for the future, right?
Right. They
Yeah,
don't. And that's where our passion lies. And that's one thing that we do take serious. You worked so hard, you've sacrificed your whole life. So make sure you protect it, because these scammers out there, these evil people, I call them, are getting more and more sophisticated. And they're coming up with different ways
yeah,
of trying to take your money. And not only them, it's our industries as a whole are, nickel and diming a lot of our you know, clients and also us
yeah,
as well. And it goes on. There's a list and list, and as we're running out of time, mortgage, taxes,
yeah,
insurance, utilities. The list goes on.
yep,
Keep an eye on that
yep.
and make sure that you are, reviewing that on a regular basis.
Exactly. Well, Brad, before we go, one more time, let our listeners know how they can set up that no charge consultation to get a plan in place, look at where they're at financially, make sure their investments are in the right place, make sure they're not overinsured or underinsured. How can they do that?
Yeah, we'd love to just sit down and visit with you. You can visit our website, financialarmorshow.com. Again, that's financialarmorshow.com, and just send us a message saying that you'd love to sit down with us and visit. Or you can call our office Monday through Friday. We will answer your phone call. You will not get voicemail and be on hold for 30 minutes. 520 Again, that's 543-8345.
All right. Thanks, Brad. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of the Financial Armor Show with our host, Brad Cooper.